Hello, everybody. a.k.a. My name is Adriana. I'm a college success coach with the American Indian College Fund. And this event today that we are hosting is called, let's see, I should have this prompted up.
Something.
Oh no, let's see. We can edit this out. Just kidding.
Edit this part.
Mariah edits. Just kidding. Here's the event that we're hosting for today that you've all registered for. Thank you so much for taking interest. This is Debunking FAFSA Myths with Auntie FAFSA, who is our very own college fund owned Delphina Thomas. This is where we're gonna all be talking. She's gonna be sharing a presentation about these different myths that you should be known about, and then also she'll be sharing some other resources that you'll find helpful. As we know, FAFSA, the new FAFSA opened up last year in December, and there's been all kinds of chaos happening with it. Hopefully it's kind of died down a little bit. But this is an event just to kind of help you, learn a little bit more about it, get some more information, and then share that knowledge amongst others that might find it helpful as well. Without further ado, I'm going to stop my screen, and then I'll go ahead and let Delphina take it from here. Oh, you're muted.
I was like, yeah, Deja. Yeah. Trabajan nishla sotodni bachustin hanarani deshite do ki ani desinale. My name's Delphina. I am a program officer for tribal college and university capacity for student success. And previous to my role at the College Fund, I was in student engagement and communications, basically doing the marketing component of student services. And then I got a new position. And so that's what I'm doing now is I work with tribal colleges. So they call me FAFSA Auntie or Auntie FAFSA because back in 2021, I went viral on TikTok for yelling good things, positive affirmations to students. At my niece's graduation. So she was graduating from high school, and I started yelling out to students, if you need help with FAFSA, let me know. And so, yeah, I got like a lot of views on that. My sister actually was recording all of this, and so it's on her TikTok. And so we got a lot of views on that, and it was just really funny. But in the same instance, a lot of students started asking me for help with FAFSA, because at that time I was working with students on completing their FAFSA. And so I've been in financial aid. Well, I was in financial aid since 2016. I worked at ASU as a financial aid counselor. And then I also worked at South Mountain Community College, just doing financial aid outreach, which is essentially helping students completing their FAFSA. So it was fun. I had a great time. And so that's why they call me FAFSA Auntie. So I have a lot of experience, but I also have a lot of personal experience with FAFSA. Not great experiences, but also I learned a lot. Just a little bit of background. I'm first generation college student. I'm currently working on my PhD in justice studies and focusing on Indigenous feminisms, activism, and story work, and work full-time at the College Fund. Really enjoy the work that I do, the people that I work with. And my basically went to Brown University for my bachelor's degree, and also got my master's in Indigenous rights and social justice from ASU. I am the first in my family to ever go to college, to basically ever do any of this. I have 3 older siblings, and none of them ever had experience with the FAFSA. So it was really, really difficult completing FAFSA when no one in your family knows how to complete it or knows what to do. I don't blame anybody for that, but I really encourage students to complete the FAFSA all the time. My fiance used to laugh about me and my nieces and nephews because I would ask students, or I'd start talking to students, like high schoolers and college students, and asking if they completed their FAFSA. So he said that my tagline or whatever is, have you completed your FAFSA? And so that's what I would always ask students, have you completed your FAFSA? Now that's slightly different. But yeah, I've always struggled with, FAFSA in my undergrad years. And so I wanted to share some of the common myths, common, misconceptions about FAFSA, because I've heard a lot of these myths myself, and I just kind of want to dispel some of these. And I'm just going to share my screen. So I am also originally from Indian Wells, Arizona, coming in from Phoenix, Arizona, unceded territory of the Yakima Otham people. And we're going to debunk some FAFSA myths. So I'm going to try to go through these so we have more time for questions. And I would really encourage you to ask any and all questions that you have if you're in the process of completing FAFSA right now, or if you've completed it before and you want to ask some questions about the new update. Please feel free, ask as many questions as possible. There aren't any like crazy questions. There's not any dumb questions. There's just questions. And I promise you that other people are probably going to ask like similar things, but maybe they're not, they don't want to ask right away, or maybe they're a little bit shy, and that's fine. So the first one is that people assume because their parents maybe make too much money, that they wouldn't qualify for federal aid. But everyone should be filling out the FAFSA. So even if you don't qualify for the federal Pell Grant, which is free money, you still might get money from your college. As a student going to a private university, so because Brown is a private school, they have a lot of money from donors. And so I still receive the full amount of the Pell Grant, but a large portion of my funding was from donors, so private funding. And so I still got a lot of money from my college just because I filled out the FAFSA. FAFSA also might be a requirement for scholarship applications. So just make sure that when you are completing your FAFSA, you're putting in all of the schools that you're interested in applying to. So even if you decide, hey, you know what, I don't want to go to a state school, I want to go out of school, that some of those scholarships that they also receive from private donors, you would be, you might get some of those as well. So my parents don't support me. I've had a few students who tell me that they have their own job, they have their own apartment, they pay all their own bills, and yet FAFSA is asking for their information. So as long as you have contact with your parents, you still need to provide their information, including their income, because FAFSA considers you, or the federal government, Department of Education, whoever's following all of this, they still think that you are dependent on your parents if you're under 24 years old. So the federal government or U.S. Department of Education considers you an independent student when you turn 24. So once you turn 24, you don't have to provide parent information anymore. So FAFSA only needs to be submitted one time. I've had students who believe that FAFSA only needs to be submitted their freshman year and that's it. But no, actually, it needs to be submitted once per academic year. And then you and your parents also need to provide your information every single year, because you and your parents' income and circumstances might change the next year, and FAFSA needs to reflect that. So some of the things that financial aid uses, or financial aid eligibility, might change from year to year because maybe your parents' economic status or the number of family members enrolled in college has changed. So FAFSA looks at all of these things. And so, for instance, my sister has 3 kids. And so when she submitted her FAFSA, or I'm sorry, when my oldest niece submitted her FAFSA, she had 2 younger siblings. When she submitted her FAFSA, she was only eligible for a portion of the federal Pell Grant. But once her second sibling submitted their FAFSA, there was two students now enrolled in college, in which case they both had an increase in their federal Pell Grant, again, which is free money. And then when my nephew, their third sibling, when he went on to college at U of A as well, they qualified for a larger portion of the FAFSA, because now, even if there is a slight increase in my sister's salary every year, she still has three students or three kids in college. And so FAFSA looks at that and says, okay, we're going to go ahead and increase your eligibility. So it is really important that you complete your FAFSA once every single academic year. I won't qualify because of my grades. So GPA is important. I want to reiterate that it is very important, and it could help with academic scholarships. Most federal student aid programs don't look at grades the very first time when you apply. So the very first time you apply for financial aid, federal financial aid, or submit your FAFSA, they don't look at your grades. But in order to continue receiving federal financial aid, like the federal Pell Grants and student loans, or even scholarships from your college, you do need to maintain SAP. SAP is satisfactory academic progress. And so for SAP, SAP includes maintaining a 2.0 GPA and higher, passing 2/3 of your classes. So like, for instance, if you have 4 classes that are 3 credit hours each, you need to pass at least 3 of those courses to get to the 9 out of 12 credit hours, basically. And then be on track toward your degree. So just basically continue doing well in school, passing all of your classes with A's, B's, and C's, completing your courses, and then staying on track toward your degree. Those are important. So this year, we have something now called the SAI, which is the student aid. It used to be the expected estimated family contribution, which made it sound like a lot of students needed to pay that amount, or their parents needed to pay the amount. So basically, when you submit your FAFSA, when you get to the confirmation page, there's a number there that's called the SAI, or the Student Aid Index. If there's a number there, you and your family are not required to pay that amount in order for you to go to college. SAI, actually, that amount tells the financial aid office what you qualify for in federal financial aid. And if there's zeros there, even better. It just means that you're eligible for the full amount of the Pell Grant because you have a high financial need. And so that's kind of where that component comes from. As far as FAFSA being the only form you need to fill out for financial aid, I had students at ASU and everywhere actually on, asking me like, well, I filled out the FAFSA, now where's my scholarship? So people assume that FAFSA is the only thing you need to fill out to get any financial aid. FAFSA actually determines what types of federal financial aid you're eligible for. So that includes grants. Grants, free money that you don't have to pay back, like the federal Pell Grant and the FSEOG. And so you don't have to remember these. You don't have to say like, how do I apply? Just fill out the FAFSA. FAFSA will determine your eligibility for the Pell and the FSEOG, as well as federal student loans and federal work study. So with federal student loans, they're going to offer subsidized loans, which means that those loans, again, loans have to be repaid. So you're going to have to pay them back, but you don't have to pay the loans back until you've graduated from college, or if you decided maybe college isn't for me, and 6 months later, that's when you have to start paying back the loan. So basically 6 months after you graduate or 6 months after you stop out, you'll have to start paying back student loans. They're going to offer you the subsidized and the unsubsidized. And The subsidized, basically the federal government pays for the interest while you're in school. The unsubsidized, once the funds hit your account, your student account, that's when interest begins to accrue. So those are the two differences between the student loans that they offer you. And I want to let you all know that you don't have to accept all of the money that they offer you, especially student loans. Student loans, you do not have to accept them. If you don't want loans, don't accept them. If you only need $100 in a student loan, you can change the amount that they offer you to only accept the $100. Whatever you need, just accept only what that amount, basically. And then federal work study. So with federal work study, basically you work and you get paid. None of that money goes to the college. When I started federal work study, I thought that I was paying off the debt that I owed the college, but no. Federal work study is just a program that helps students get a job at the college, and the main benefits of that is the student decides how many hours they want to work. So if they want to work 20 hours, they can. The school understands that the students are students first and foremost, and so they should be working around your school schedule. And if they're not, you need to advocate for yourself and talk to maybe the dean of academics. But those are the two large components or large benefits of federal work study. The other one is if you only had a work study job as income for the tax year FAFSA is asking, you could actually put that on your FAFSA. So if you made like $6,000 from your federal work study job and you did taxes, you don't have to report that as income on your FAFSA. There's another section on there that asks if you had federal work study money, so it doesn't count against you. Because if you put it in the income portion, they're going to say, hey, you made $6,000 and you might go down. Your Pell eligibility might go down just slightly. It really depends. But those are the benefits for federal work study. And then applying for individual scholarships. So like at the college fund, you would have to apply for college for scholarships in our portal once the application opens. Similarly with, like the Cobell Scholarship, Native Forward, all these other organizations, you have to apply for those scholarships separately, as well as tribal scholarships. To make sure that when you do fill out the FAFSA, that you understand it's for federal money from the federal government and not from other sources. Filling out the FAFSA anytime. So yes and no. I would fill out the FAFSA as soon as it's available. I know this year was really difficult for a lot of students because, it wasn't available until I think like at the end of December, beginning of January, something like that, which is kind of pushing it. But as soon as the FAFSA is available, I would definitely recommend filling it out right then and there, just so that you can get it over with. But also the FSEOG grant that I'd mentioned earlier is a grant that's provided to students who fill out their FAFSA earlier than other students. And so oftentimes that FAFSA, that funding is first come, first serve. And so people who receive the FSEOG grant generally will get that money first from their college. Things like the federal Pell Grant, they're not going to run out of money for that, but filling out your FAFSA also avoids a lot of headache because then you're done with it. You don't have to think about it. And you can add up to 10 colleges to your FAFSA. So if you're undecided about where you want to go, add all 10 colleges. Doesn't mean that you have to attend all 10 or that all 10 are going to get confused and something's going to happen. Wherever you apply and submit your application and you say, hey, I'm going to go to that college, your FAFSA is going to connect with your social security number, and then it'll be in their system. Also, certain scholarships require that students fill out their FAFSA at their own deadline. So when I was working at ASU, we had the Obama Scholarship, which was available to students who, I believe their parents made like under a certain amount. So there was an income restriction, but they also had to fill out their FAFSA by January like 31st or something like that. And so a lot of students had to fill out their FAFSA before then. So make sure that when you're applying for scholarships as well, that if there is a FAFSA component to it, that you're meeting that component if they're assigning a deadline. But also just fill out the FAFSA really quick, get it done, get it out of the way. And so number 8, I was in this situation. I can't fill out the FAFSA because my parents don't have income. My mom was on disability, so she was a weaver for years. She also worked as a housekeeper for a really long time, just cleaning hotels and motels in our hometown. And so she didn't really make enough money to like have to fill out to do taxes, basically. She made way below that. But then she went on to disability, in which case she couldn't work anymore. And so she didn't really have an income. So with disability or SSI or SSDI, if any of those acronyms make sense to you, or you've heard those acronyms before, or your parents have used those terms before, or you know what the first of the month means, with your parents, then generally that means that they don't have an income where they've had to do taxes, basically. And so income isn't a requirement to fill out the FAFSA. If your parents didn't have any income in the tax year FAFSA is requesting, it's okay to put zeros, because there's another section on the FAFSA that asks for Social Security benefits. And in that section, that's where you would put your parents' SSI or SSDI. FAFSA is complicated. Yes. If you're completing the paper version, it is super complicated. So don't ever complete the paper version. It makes no sense to do so, especially if you have a phone, or if you have a library or access to the internet. FAFSA is really complicated on the paper form, like that version. I don't even think I would ever want to do it again. I did that my high school year. And so it's been so much easier as the years progress. So if you don't fill out your FAFSA, so if FAFSA being complicated is a hindrance, or if it's stopping you from completing it, remember that you're not going to receive federal aid, grants, or scholarships that you might be eligible for. And then because we have online access to just about everything, the online version actually will skip questions that don't pertain to you or your parents or your situation. And so if you answer a question early on in the FAFSA, like for instance, my parents aren't required to fill out FAFSA anymore. And so I can skip that parent portion. I don't have to complete it. And so I fill out my FAFSA with my own information. Similar to students who might have a different guardian. So if your legal guardian is someone other than your parents, then there is a question on the FAFSA that asks if you have legal guardianship or if you've been in foster care. It's going to skip the parent portion and go directly to providing your information. So answering the questions on the FAFSA will determine what questions they're going to ask you in a good way. And then having all of your documents handy is so much easier to like complete your FAFSA than digging around or asking your parents for this, that, and the other. If you go on FAFSA, or if you Google like FAFSA documents or a list of documents, it'll actually bring up different documents that you might need to complete your FAFSA. And if you go to FAFSA, if you go to the FAFSA website, there are a lot of resources available there that will tell you what documents you'll need to complete your FAFSA. And then once you finished your FAFSA the very first time online, the next year they're going to provide you a FAFSA renewal option, which makes filling it out so much faster and quicker. So I have the FAFSA renewal option every single year, and it takes me maybe like 15 minutes to complete my FAFSA. And I've also helped parents and students complete their FAFSA together, especially with the FAFSA renewal. And it takes maybe like 10-15 minutes to complete. So it is a really quick process. And I do understand that some students have special circumstances. For students with special circumstances, and that varies. So there's like a large range of students. I would contact maybe your counselor or the financial aid office at the college you plan on attending, and they might be able to help you with your FAFSA as well. So the last myth being, I'm done with FAFSA and that's all I need to do. Not necessarily. In the past, about 30% of students who completed their FAFSA were selected for something called verification. So verification is requested by the Department of Education, and instead of the Department of Education requesting verification documents, your school that you're going to attend is going to request those documents on their behalf to complete your FAFSA. So verification basically is a process where students provide additional information to the school you plan on attending to verify what they put on their FAFSA. And it doesn't mean, oh no, like I'm in trouble because I put something wrong. It's just sometimes there's a few discrepancies or just a couple of flags that pop up, and that's okay. Don't get deterred. Don't feel overwhelmed or scared or confused. It's okay to feel all those things, but I promise you that it's not a scary process, because sometimes they might be asking for a signed copy of your parents' tax returns, or maybe W-2s, or maybe a household size form to verify that, yeah, this person does have 3 college students and they're all attending the same school, or any other documents. It really just depends, but usually it's like, a tax form, or a W-2 or a household size form. And one of the things I didn't put on this is FAFSA actually has something called a data retrieval tool, which basically pulls in your parents' tax return information directly into the FAFSA from the IRS website. So that's an option, and that reduces your chances of getting selected for verification. All right, and then we're going to go to the questions. So I'm just going to stop here. Okay, let's see. Does FAFSA assist with multiple associate's degrees and only one bachelor's? I've always heard that. Thank you. Yeah, so good question. So once you received your bachelor's degree, you can't receive the federal Pell Grant anymore or subsidized loans. So those are only available to students who are receiving their bachelor's degrees. Once you enter into like professional degrees or a graduate degree, so like your master's degree or a PhD, you will only be offered unsubsidized loans. And so unsubsidized loans, yeah, that's your only option. But there are a lot of colleges, who offer financial aid, or stipends or tuition waivers, depending on the program. So yeah, I would definitely say that you could get multiple associate's degrees, but at some point the federal Pell Grant might cap out and you will no longer have access to it. So what I would suggest is to complete your associate's degree, move on to your bachelor's, so that you're not tapping into the federal Pell Grant anymore, because it does have a cap. So yeah, there's that. Can you change this option even after you've submitted FAFSA for work study and you checked no? Yes, you can, but it does take, I think, like 5 to 7 business days for your FAFSA to update. So what I always tell students is when they are, if you're interested in federal work study, I would say yes on the FAFSA, let it process, do its thing. Because even if you decide, hey, you know what, I want to do federal work study later on in the semester, and let's say you said no, and you decide you want to do federal work study, you have to go back into your FAFSA, change that one answer to yes, to the process, get to your college. Your college will then put that award into your financial aid package, and then you can at that point look for a job and look for a job on campus, apply for that job, interview, all of that, and go through the process. Versus if you say yes, you are not required to get the job. You don't have to, like, you're not, they're not going to make you work if you say yes. But it is easier to just say, like, yeah, I might be interested. So think about that. Are financial award packages final, or can they be renegotiated? Not necessarily. I would say it is worth it. So like background, when I worked at ASU, sometimes I worked in a different department, not like the on campus. Sometimes we had funding that we could provide to students. So if students had, maybe a $1,000 balance, we could see if we had additional grant university funding to apply for that student, apply to that student's financial aid or their balance. So I wouldn't say you can't really renegotiate a financial aid award package. If you are selected for verification, and there's a lot of different components to that. So for instance, like if, for instance, you're an independent student and you put on your FAFSA that you're married, but then maybe at a later point, like maybe a week later, a month later, whatever it might be, you and your spouse are separated or divorced, you can actually contact your financial aid office and say, hey, you know what, I'm no longer with my partner, and so I'm only one income, and I would like to remove my partner's information. So at that point, that's something that I would do in the financial aid office, is I could take your W-2 and only provide your information if you provide me with a document or something official saying that you're separated or divorced. That's kind of how that financial aid award package could change. Or maybe if parents were getting divorced and you were staying with one parent 51% of the time and 49% with the other parent, at that point, if you're getting separated or divorced, then yeah. But if your parents are getting remarried, that would just include the new parent's income. Yeah. Let's see. What do you suggest if the tribal student doesn't have a great relationship with their parents, or if they are in foster care? So two separate things. Great relationship with their parents, if they still have a relationship with their parents, regardless if it's good or not, then they still have to provide parent information. If they have been removed from the home and are now living with maybe a grandparent, that grandparent can apply for instance, they could apply for legal guardianship, in which case then the grandparent would be the person responsible for the student, and the parents are no longer in the picture. We wouldn't even need the grandparents' information. We would just need the student's information. And then foster care. So there is a question on the form: 1, legal parent, and then 2, has the student been in foster care since 13? If they have been in foster care, since the age of 13, then they're considered an independent student. Same thing with a legal guardian. If they have a legal guardian other than their biological parents, they're considered an independent student. This is unfortunate that this happens, but it does. How can students who do not know or have contact with their parents proceed with FAFSA? They do have homes, but they're, oh yeah, okay. At that point, that's one of the special circumstances that I was talking about. So even if they don't have legal guardianship, they can actually say that they don't have a relationship with their parents. I've had a lot of students say, like, I don't know where my mom is, or I don't know where my dad is. I don't know where my parents are. And so in that case, they would contact the college and ask what kind of documentation they would need in order to proceed as an independent student. And that way they don't have to provide parent information at all. So that's what I would suggest for students who are in this situation, because each college has a different process. Like, I could tell you the process for South Mountain and for ASU, but those are two different processes, and they look different for each of those colleges. So my recommendation would be to contact the college and contact the college's financial aid office and ask what their process is for this specific situation, because they do have a process in place for the student in these specific situations. Yeah, it is unfortunate that it does happen this way, but and sometimes legal guardianship isn't a requirement, so it really depends. Jordan, I have too much credit. If you want to elaborate on maybe what question you want answered, I can probably help with that. Renita, what are the disadvantages for the Department of Education pushing back the deadline to apply to December 1st? Does that refer students applying or reapplying for school in 2025? So yeah, that's a good question. I know I kind of just like mumbled over that, but basically, the Department of Education changed FAFSA completely in terms of the deadline. So FAFSA used to so years ago, FAFSA used to be available January 1st, and then they changed that. And now FAFSA is available. It was available October 1st of every year, and then they changed it just recently again, saying that the FAFSA would be available December 1st, but then it wasn't available until after December. And so the way that some of the things that they're changing about the FAFSA is good, in terms of, say, like incarcerated students who weren't eligible for federal Pell Grant before, but are now. So that's one of the changes. Providing, equity and education to be accessible for everyone, really important. One of the other things is they shortened the FAFSA. So now they're asking less questions. So before, I think there were like 60 something, and now there's like 40 something. So they've revamped that. They've also changed the term from EFC to SAI, which is Student Aid Index. So there's a lot of like internal things that they've changed about the FAFSA, and every single year, when they either update the FAFSA, like itself, the application, or the website, they update that. There's always issues. I promise you, every single year there's issues. Not like this though, because they've made so many changes to FAFSA in terms of how many questions, the path, so like asking, questions in the beginning, and then how many questions students will have to ask later or answer later on. That's part of like changing the path as well. As far as the deadline, I'm hoping that they can fix a lot of these issues with the FAFSA, just the way that it's working. because now what has happened is a lot of those FAFSA, they're called ICERs, or those back-end applications that go to the college. Those are taking longer to process, so they're backed up just a little bit because FAFSA wasn't available. Now it's available. Now it's taking longer. There were some issues that they had to fix those issues. Students are now submitting FAFSA, and now it's starting to work like it should. And so because there's so many backed up applications, they have to process those in the college's systems. Each of the all the colleges in the entire United States, they have to upload those. And so all of those applications are kind of just waiting to be uploaded. And so the large issue with that being that financial aid award packages aren't being put together quicker than they were in the past. So like, it's just a big thing. But they've completed a lot of, they've fixed a lot of those issues. And so they've implemented, so by they, I mean the Department of Education, they've reinstated weekend hours for the call centers. So if you have an issue with your FAFSA, they're available on the weekends now. So the FSA, Federal Student Aid offices, are available. They've resolved all known issues to the 2425 form, and it's working for a lot of students, so a large part of students. They're streamlining the FSA ID process. So the FSA ID is basically like an online signature sort of way. And then they're restarting something called batch corrections. So that's like the back end application known as the ICER in financial aid. And so they've restarted batch corrections, which means that if you have like, say, like a wrench in the system, and once that wrench gets pulled out, now the system can start working again. So they're restarting those batch corrections so that those applications can go through the process seamlessly. They're also, what are they doing? They're making the like FSA stuff, all the online stuff, like much easier to complete for a lot of students, especially students who don't have social security numbers. So in the past, students without social security numbers had to complete a paper form, or they had to go through a whole process, but that's not a holdup anymore for a lot of the students, which is a really good advantage. So I'm confident that starting in this, when the FAFSA opens up again in December of this year, that it's going to be a lot better for our students, and that we'll see an increase in FAFSA completion. And I don't want you to feel deterred because the FAFSA process is, I've helped a lot of students actually. Now I don't do FAFSA stuff anymore. Every now and then people will ask me to help with FAFSA, and I've helped students complete FAFSA this year. And even with all of the tech issues and everything that's been happening, I've not seen any problems with their FAFSAs getting completed. So tell your students, tell your parents, everybody to complete the FAFSA just so that it's done. SAP. Let's see, for SAP form, can it be completed for the time the FAFSA application covers it, or does it have to be done at each semester and summer? That so SAP, satisfactory academic progress, sometimes students who aren't meeting the GPA requirement or the time frame, like passing all of their courses, and if they're withdrawing or failing courses and not completing 2/3 of their overall coursework, or maybe they're over the credit hours. Like sometimes I've seen students who have completed, say like an associate's requires 90 credit hours and they're like at 200 or something, I don't know, whatever it is, they're over that 90 credit hours. At that point, they might be on probation for financial aid. That's why I was saying just pass your classes, get a 2.0, and stay on track toward your degree so that you don't have to worry about like probation or filling out an SAP appeal form, and that's what Scott's talking about. So for the SAP appeal, that depends on each college. So every college, again, has their own process. Sometimes a college requires a student to complete their SAP appeal form every single semester for every, like, until they get to good standing, right? So in that means like increasing their GPA, or maybe if they're not completing 2/3 of their coursework. It really just depends. One, if that's an issue, still complete your FAFSA. Always complete your FAFSA every single year. I can't tell you enough. Complete your FAFSA, because once the school gets your FAFSA, they're going to tell you what they need from you in order for you to get your federal financial aid. And so when Scott's talking about the SAP form, make sure that you follow up with your school if you think that you might be on probation. Any tips for a non-traditional student going to grad school? Yeah, all the scholarships. I got a university grant for like $3,000 for my master's degree, and I did have to take out, oh wait, no, I didn't take out a student loan. I worked at ASU at the time, and so I used the tuition waiver, and I applied for the Native, it's called Native Forward now, but it was American Indian Graduate Center. I applied for their scholarship, and so between those three, I was able to pay for my master's degree. And then my PhD, I actually didn't have to pay for that either. So I was provided with a stipend for teaching at ASU. They paid for my tuition, and they provided me with healthcare. And PhD programs, when you do apply for them, they'll tell you if there is this component to provide funding for you as a PhD student. I also supplemented a lot of that PhD with scholarships. So again, with Native Forward, what's the other scholarship? Yeah, Native Forward, I think, was the one that I used fairly often. And anything that I received from that, if I received a refund because everything was paid for, then I would just use that for my rent or gas to get to and from school, books. Obviously, I bought myself a new laptop because I needed it, you know, so there was a lot of things. But for grad school specifically, yeah, I would talk to the school to see what types of funding they offer, if any, so you can avoid student loans, but also COBEL. I think they provide like $20,000 for graduate students per year, per academic year, something like that. The College Fund, we offer graduate school funding as well. And then Native Forward, I'm always going to speak very highly of them because they helped me a lot through my master's program. So yes, and ask your school what kind of funding they provide. Do they ever take medical into account? No. Armand. Yeah, actually, okay. So Anya, that was another special circumstance, looking at like medical bills. If you're paying a large amount of medical, if you're paying, yeah, lots of medical bills, and it's taking a substantial amount out of your take-home pay, you can actually contact the school. They should have a special circumstances form to take that into account. So for instance, the FAFSA this year, it was 24-25, the one that's still around, that's starting this year. The 24-25 FAFSA is going to look at 2022 income. And so if at that time your income was also, if you were at the same time taking care of your child who is sick and paying all those medical bills, yes, you can actually ask them to take a look and see if you would receive more of the Pell Grant, because you're not a lot of people during COVID were laid off, like in 2020. And so I helped with a lot of students and parents who needed their financial aid readjusted. And so they would say like, hey, I lost my job during COVID. And so we would say, well, how many months did you work? And then use that income instead. Again, every college is different in the way they look at special circumstances, but I would definitely contact them. When is it too late to submit the FAFSA? That's a good question, because it's not necessarily too late. You could submit the FAFSA now if you wanted to. You could submit the FAFSA 6 months from now. When it's too late is when July 1st hits of the next year. So, but I wouldn't focus on when it's too late. Just submit it as soon as you can, because then you don't have to worry about it. So like, for instance, if you're not attending college this semester and you want to attend next fall or next spring, you can still fill out the FAFSA. If you wanted to attend college this fall, they have Session B courses that start in October sometimes, or you could start paying out of pocket until your financial aid comes in. But also make sure that if you do that route, that you know for sure you're going to get the federal Pell Grant, which is why I'm saying fill out the FAFSA as soon as possible. If it's possible for you to pay out of pocket until your financial aid comes in, do that. But if you don't think that you're going to have any federal Pell Grant, or maybe not enough money to cover your semester, I would wait. I wouldn't pay out of pocket in that situation. But just submit your FAFSA as soon as possible. Does the parent have to complete something every year for each student? Yes. So every single student who wants to attend college needs to fill out the FAFSA, and that includes parent information. So parents will have to provide their tax return information, all of that, in order for the student's application to be complete. You have a bachelor's degree. The FAFSA didn't cap out on first and you're going for second bachelor's, still eligible even after you completed. I don't have, are you asking me? I have one bachelor's degree. I guess I'm sorry, I don't understand your question, but FAFSA, federal financial aid, or the federal Pell Grant, is only available to students completing their first bachelor's degree. If you wanted to receive a second bachelor's degree, you would either have to pay with like a loan or pay out of pocket, similar to like getting a master's or like a PhD or like an accelerated degree. But FAFSA or federal Pell Grant only pays for the first bachelor's. If you're eligible for the Pell Grant, you can still get, I believe you can still get subsidized and unsubsidized loans for a second bachelor's degree. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, federal Pell Grant only pays for one bachelor's. If my parents' income decreased from what was reported while submitting the FAFSA, do we have to wait until? No. So you can, another special circumstance, contact the financial aid office, let them know that your parents' income decreased from 2022 to now. Then they'll ask for W-2s, they'll ask for this, that, and the other. And then at that point, they can update with the new information. I'm not sure how does it work for parents, step parents, etc. means. Is it better to have the student try to file as independent? I don't really know what that means either. For FAFSA purposes, if the student is under 24 and they still have a relationship with their parents will, the student is dependent on their parents, so they have to provide parent information. Yes, you can still apply for federal financial aid if you have GI post 9/11 bill. 100% yes, get all the money. If you qualify for the federal Pell Grant, get it. I have an AA and business admin. I paid off my loan, now I'm getting cybersecurity. yeah, then Jordis, you probably still have you federal Pell Grant money available for that. So you just have to fill out your FAFSA to see if you're eligible for it. If you're eligible for it, then you could probably get your AA in cybersecurity and a bachelor's. Let's see, can students attend college? Yes, 1000%. Can students attend college without filling out the FAFSA? What are the pros and cons? Yes, FAFSA is not a requirement to attend college. It's a requirement to receive federal financial aid. So sometimes if you can pay for college out of pocket, that's awesome. By all means, pay for college. But federal financial aid is available for students who, even if you do have money to pay for college out of pocket, you don't want to miss out on some of those other opportunities. If they offer you a student loan and you're like, I don't want to take out a loan, then pay for it out of pocket. That's fine. Gap year. Does this affect his new graduate for the FAFSA and applying? Sadly, yeah, I don't think that that's sad. I think that that's smart to take a gap year. I really do. It's just helping students kind of figure out where they are with everything, and that's totally fine. As far as like a gap year, it doesn't affect the student. So for instance, if you fill out the FAFSA today and tomorrow you're like, I don't want to go to school yet, that's fine. Nothing's going to happen with your application. No one's going to force you to go to college. They're not going to take your money. They're not going to bill you for anything. Nothing's going to happen. That FAFSA will just sit there. And then if you decide the next year, hey, you know what, I want to fill out my FAFSA. At that point, you can fill out the FAFSA again and you can decide to go to school the next year. Nothing really is affected by that. If there are scholarships that a student is receiving, so for instance, at the college fund, we have scholars who maybe decide to push, they're like, they don't want to go in the fall, they'll go in the spring. That's okay. You just have to contact the scholarship office and say, hey, I'm not going to school this fall. I want to, push it to the spring. That's fine. Most scholarships are open to that. In fact, they could probably fund a student for that semester if they're able to. It really depends. You can, if you're working on a second bachelor's degree, totally. You can have your FAFSA sent to the school, but you probably will only be eligible for student loans. If the student's emancipated, that's a good question because that's a question on the FAFSA. Again, there's a list of independent questions asking if the student's an emancipated minor, if they're in foster care, if they have legal guardianship other than their parents. Let's see, there's like a whole list of questions that they ask you. And then if you're an emancipated minor, you click that. You don't have to provide parent information. It goes directly to your information. And so you just put your information in. Hey, Delphina, this is Justine. So my students are zooming in from Australia. Hi, Justine and Australia students. So happy to have you here. That's all the questions. I was doing that in a fast round, but thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Please fill out the survey, the evaluation form, and you can enter for a chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Delphina. Thank you so much. You zoomed through those questions like a boss, like literally. But those are some good questions, everybody. Thank you so much for participating. I hope that you all learned something and took a lot of notes and all the information now to share with your students, or if you're going to be applying for the FAFSA for yourself, taking this and kind of feeling more confident with applying for the application. But yeah, so like I said, this video is being recorded. It'll be uploaded onto our YouTube. Delphina, are you comfortable with sharing your slides?
Yeah, I can do that. I'll send it to Adriana and she'll send it in a follow-up.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, I'll send it to everybody who registered for this event. But yeah, thank y'all so much. Please fill out the event evaluation. We are going to be giving out some pretty cool prizes, well, the gift card. And then for the first 10 event evaluations that we get, you'll be getting an additional gift. I'm not going to tell you because it's going to be a surprise. But yeah, thank y'all so much. I hope you have a good rest of your evening. Let me just put this up here for y'all. So I did put the link in the chat, but if you like to do QR codes like me, there it is. Again, if you want to keep up with us and stay up to date on different events that we like to host. This is being one of them, but we also host a lot of different things, especially when our scholarship opens, which our scholarship opens on February 1st of every year. We do a lot of info sessions, and we even get some of the scholarship reviewers to come in and share, like tips and tricks on how to make your scholarship application even stronger. But yeah, if you want to do that, follow us on Native Pathways. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X or Twitter, and then TikTok as well. But yeah, thanks to everybody. Hope you all have a great rest of your evening, and
Oh,
see you with the next.
really quick, speaking of TikToks, I was trying to share the TikTok that went viral, but I can't. So I'm gonna have to, I'll send it to Adriana so she can insert it in the beginning of this recording. That way y'all can see that. But thank you again.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, everybody have a good rest of your day.